whenever that gets read, I always have to say that my mother would hear that, she'd wonder if I could hold a job. I've been blessed in many ways in my life, and one of the greatest blessings has been in the last 6.5 years of being able to work with 28 wonderful institutions throughout the state. And I cannot tell you how important it is to me to be able to come to events like this, to see the people. You can get separated. Elected public officials understand, you get involved in what you're doing, and sometimes there's a separation from the policy and the people that it really matters to. For me, I have 170,000 students and 29,000 employees and all these, and I could sit and talk numbers to you all day. But it's the people that really make the difference. I thank you. I'm honored to be here today. What a wonderful occasion. What an amazing building. The story of this institution, what an amazing story. The people it served. It's absolutely phenomenal. Just, I'm touched to be here today, I must say to you. And it's been an interesting week. In my job, I get to do all kinds of cool things sometimes things very tedious. Terry and I were chatting this week. I got to spend time over in Broward County at Nova Southeastern and then at Broward College, which was my alma mater. I'm not unlike the student that spoke here. I grew up in South Broward. Working mom, working myself all the time. If it hadn't been for the community college there, I don't know that I would have gone to college, frankly. That was my doorway, that was my access to success. Went there and was able to work full-time, go to school full-time, and eventually transfer up to Florida State. And managed to finish there. Again, my mom wasn't quite sure I would, but I did. But I went home this week. I got to go back to South Broward and go to visit. And the purpose of the visit was quite interesting. The Dalai Lama came to Broward. And I got invited to meet with him, and be on a program with him. For those of you that don't know the history of the Dalai Lama, he's a very funny man. Let me digress a bit. He's a tremendous sense of humor and loves his own sense of humor. He has pretty good management of English, but then when he gets into trying to tell a joke or in part of his comments, he talked rather quickly with the accent, and you'd sort of miss it, but you knew it was funny because he laughed. He had this belly laugh that just wouldn't stop, so the audience would just respond tremendously. My daughter, who's a student at one of our ICUF institutions, she's a medical student at Nova, I got to bring her to the first event, and as he walked across the stage, she leaned into me and she said, "He's such a cute little man." You don't talk about a holy man being a cute little man, but you know what? He is a cute little man. He is just adorable. I got to sit on the stage with him, and we had to we were exchanging questions and issues, and he had, in his lectures, he had talked about commitment. And one of the things he talked about is the commitment to the individual. That was his number one commitment, was to reach into the hearts and the minds of individuals to get them to see, obviously to see his life, but to see the peaceful way of reconciling differences and the value. He talked a lot about the values of education. And then he talked more globally. The other commitment was to change countries and change international affairs. So when I got my question, when I got to ask him my question, I said, you talk about both. You talk about reaching into the individual. And I said, and Your Holiness, you're a great teacher. And that's really what Dalai Lama is. It's universal teacher in the translation. He's a great teacher. So you talk to governors, governments, you talk to presidents and prime ministers, and they don't always hear you. You don't always get your way. I pointed to the audience of educators and said, much like the people in this room who talk every day to students, hoping to reach into the inner being, the inner soul of everybody that's sitting there, and change their mind. I said, how do you reach the individual to get them to understand the role that they play in building their self-image and building their self-esteem? Now, I knew the answer. I knew what my answer would be. And he kind of paralleled what I would have said. And his parallel was, he just kind of sat, and for the first time in a lot of the questions, I could tell that I got his mind engaged because he just would tend to roll on a lot of questions. He sat up, he sits up, he pulls his feet up under him, and he started rolling, and he just shook his hand and he went, 1, 2, 10, 100, 1,000. And when I hear about the number of graduates from this institution, that was my thought when I reached him, to say, how do we reach people? How do we change society? How do we make Florida a better place to be? We do it in places like this. We do it in our schools. We do it in our K-12 public and private schools. We do it in all of our universities and colleges. We're trying to change the hearts and minds of individuals, making them realize inside the value that they hold as that one, as the Dalai Lama said, as that one, working one at a time to build people who have self-images that have value, that understand that they can be a success in life, but it's going to take them working to do that, working full-time and studying from 10 to 12 at night, studying at 2 in the morning, whatever it takes, knowing that at the end of that effort, that there's a goal, not just to get the diploma. Everybody goes to school and everyone gets diplomas, and gee, isn't that wonderful? But the diploma is just a piece of paper. The life of the institution, the values that you gain when you're at a place like Hodges, the things it does to change you and change your outlook, that's what really matters. Leaving here with the confidence to know that you can make a difference in your own life, the life of your family, the life of your community, to run for public office, to serve on boards, to serve on commissions, to give of yourself. That happens here. That's the magic. That is the total magic of a place like Hodges. So to be here today for me is it's reinforcing to me to see all of you people that care. Because every one of you has made a choice to be here, to support this place and to help make it grow. Boy, is it growing. It's tremendous. And I see this as I move to all of our institutions. Now, how many people here had ever heard the acronym ICUF before? Probably very few. It's the Independent Colleges and Universities of Florida. There are 28 of them, as has been said. Every one of them is different. They all have different missions and purposes. But the main purpose of all of them is to do just like I just said, to change lives, to give people the tools in their toolbox to make a difference in their own lives and the lives of others. And just, to me, that is the most wonderful thing you can do in life, to change people, to change them for the better, to give them the ability to understand that as they move through life, they can make a difference in someone else's life. Now, those 28 institutions are not like what most people on the outside, you people in this room understand who is Hodges, who does Hodges serve, who are the students at Hodges. I tell you, part of my job is going around traveling the state of Florida. I just spent the last couple of weeks visiting with editorial boards. That's always a lot of fun. It's like running for office, frankly. I mean, I'm going around and I'm having to convince editors of every newspaper in the state of the value of the ICUF system and the value of FRAG, Florida Resident Access Grant. I'm government related, so I speak in acronyms. We can't help ourselves. But FRAG is the most important thing that I can do to help make things possible for students out there. FRAG had $3,000 a year. This is a state grant from the state of Florida, and when you leave here today, I beseech you, go home and write letters to your local legislative delegation and tell them the value of this program. They have to hear from people like you, not from just people like me. I do this. When I walk in their office, they know what I'm there for. We understand that. We love the program. You're great. But if they hear from you, they're going to go, whoa, wait a minute. Somebody out there is paying attention to this. FRAG was a grant that 2 years ago reached $3,000 per student. $3,000. Now, let me tell you, right now, in every county, in every school, in every classroom in this state, in high school, there are people sitting deciding about going to college. And here's my view on that. You've got two students sitting right next to each other. Now, this is the traditional student I'm talking about. One of them says, I think I'm going to stay in the community and I'm going to go to Hodges, and I'm going to ask the taxpayers of Florida to help me just a little. If they can just help me a little by funding that FRAG, it's going to make the world a difference, and I'll be able to afford and finance and work with my family and work myself to pay the rest of my way. And build that self-reliance and that independence that we'd like to see in people. Now, I'm not degrading those that go to public institutions. I went to one. But the student sitting in the very next chair is saying, you know, I think I'm going to apply to, pick one, University of South Florida, and go to the University of South Florida. And I'm going to ask the taxpayers of Florida to pay my way, to pay for it all, because that's in fact what's happening. That's how our system is funded. And we have to fight every year. We have to battle every year to get that small token that's about somewhere between a fourth and a fifth of what it costs for that student to go to that public institution to enable them to come to Hodges. They have to be going full-time, so if they're working and can't get a full-time load in, they don't get it. It's very, very difficult to do that. Those are champions to me, the people that work full-time, have families, and still manage to get education, and then have to take full-time loads in order to get assistance from the state. Something wrong with that, but that's where we are. Those people are going to be successful in life. They're self-reliant to begin with. They're making choices that we should value and we should nurture. And I really encourage you, you know the members of your legislative delegation, let them know how important it is. Letters from you will make a world of difference for every one of those students. And here's what happens to that grant program. It went from $3,000 2 years ago to $28.37. It dropped because of the state's budget crisis. It went to $25.29 this fall, $2,529. All the students getting it got a notice second semester this year that it was going to be $18 less. Why? Because our enrollment in our institutions grows. Now, it's one of those rare government programs. You don't see these very often. It's a rare government program that, if it does, if our schools do what, as a matter of public policy, they want us to do, which is create access and create opportunity, the more students we have in the program, the less money there is for the other students in the program. So it's not being funded. If Hodges increased 300, next fall we'll get 300 more undergraduates that were eligible for Friday than they had this year. It's not, it's the state's going to say, 2,500 times those 300, we're going to send you this check. Now what's going to happen is you only have a finite amount of money, and that money is going to be divided down based on how many are qualified. Which means the state then is reaching into the pocket of the sophomore, the junior, the senior at Hodges that's been getting the grant and saying to them, that's great, but we're going to give you a little bit less because we're going to fund these additional students. And that just happened this January as the state reached into the pocket of every student in the program. And you might think, well, $18, that's not a big deal. But when these are working people, low income, the public image of who goes to our institutions couldn't be farther from the truth. We did a cross comparison of the 11 state universities and our 28 institutions and blended them on data points. Family incomes under $60,000, Pell Grant eligible, minorities over 25, and in every case, 9 out of the top 10, when we blended us with the state institutions, were ICUF institutions, not public institutions. The only public institution that makes the top 10 list of those is Florida A&M University, not any of those. We are creating access to success for Florida. Places like Hodges University are creating access to success that people that need it. We talk a lot about that, about creating access and creating opportunity. Places like this are the ladders that people can climb to be better people. Right? Support this place every chance you get. But also let those public officials know how important it is. Now, I could talk up here, as you can tell, I haven't even looked at my notes, and I told Terry I'd do this. I write things out, and then I end up never looking at them. But I want to look at two things for you, because part of what I've done the past couple of weeks is traveling around with editorial boards, and we've met with great success in doing that. If you'll indulge me, the Miami Herald put it so well. When you hit a home run with an editorial board, it's just such a nice feeling. They get it. They understand it. And their editorial the other day was titled, "Worth Every Penny." Okay? In tough times, you bargain hunt for quality. There's no better bargain today in higher education than the Florida Resident Access Grant. It helps high school graduates attend the state's nonprofit independent colleges and universities as part of a financial aid package. It's a bargain for the students and for taxpayers. The state spends only 1.3% of its higher education budget on FRAG. It's about $2,500 a year. This grant began in 1979, it's in its 31st year, and it's kept thousands of students in Florida instead of heading to out-of-state universities. Unfortunately, the trend during the past few years of tight budgets has been for the legislature to chop the grant. Now there are grumblings again of Tallahassee for more. According to the Herald, what foolishness. It's senseless to limit the number of students who need FRAG to enroll in these schools at a time when Florida's public universities already have been forced to reduce enrollment. If Florida is serious about diversifying its economy with more college graduates, it should be expanding FRAG, not squeezing it. And they go on for 2 more pages. Well, that just makes me happy. The Tampa Tribune has done the same. Florida Times Union has done the same. We're being told that about 6 other newspapers around the state are going to join the chorus. That helps us. That's ammunition. Those are arrows in my quiver that I can work with legislators on. But the best ammunition we have, and I refer to this as we're in battle. Tallahassee's always in battle. And we deal with intellectual ammunition. And the best ammunition we can have is your support. Your support for this institution, your support for students in general, and your support for public officials who understand and grasp the value of higher education. I get asked a lot about in these tight budget times, what's happening in the budget. You have to think about what happens in Tallahassee. K-12 education is, I always think of it as a feeding trough. And you're a farmer and you've got hogs. So K-12 is a giant hog coming up to that feeding trough. They're going to eat a big chunk of that budget no matter what. Healthcare and Medicaid is going to eat another big chunk of that budget. And behind that, you've got corrections and then transportation. Higher education is way down the list. And it becomes oftentimes the easiest to cut because you can't cut poor kids on assistance. You can't cut Medicaid. There's so much complexity to it. So we're having a battle for every dollar. But when they know it's a priority of yours, when they know that it matters to you, that higher education matters to you, they make it a priority of them as the collective. So I compliment you for all you've done for this place. I ask you to help us, to help make more access possible for people. And I'd like to, if I could, just close with a quote. It's not one from the Dalai Lama, so, although it could be, because caring is universal. And Hodges cares for its students, and it cares for its community. But the quote's from Albert Einstein. And Einstein's quote is, "Only a life lived for others is worth living." And that's what educators do. They give their lives for the benefit of others, so others can grow and prosper and add to the fabric of our community. And I think that's why Hodges University is here, to serve others, to exist for the benefit of others, so that they can go out and do the same. So Terry and to the trustees and others, honored guests here, students, congratulations to you. What a wonderful service you provide. It's magical, the life-changing experience of higher education. This place is magic. It's been 20 years of fantastic growth, and what a wonderful new building, enable you to expand even more. And I just hope you have 20 years of doubling the success you've had now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is for you, Ed. You came down from Tallahassee. We got a bunch like this in the back. I got mine. This actually is for you. We do want to thank Ed for coming down and spending the afternoon with us. Obviously, his advocacy is so critical to us in Tallahassee. It's so critical not only to this institution, but to our 27 sister institutions in the state who simply try to change lives one life at a time. So thank you very much from Hodges University.